It is my pleasure and honor to open today's conversation on the critical role of journalism and exile. My name is Adil Raz, and I'm the director of Afghanistan Policy Lab at Princeton School of Public and International Affairs. As many of you have been very closely following the situation of Afghanistan after the Taliban's takeover in August of 2021, we have seen its devastating impact on the journalists and media in Afghanistan. Taliban have systematically suppressed journalists and the free press, forcing media outlets to closure or to comply with the new regime's rules. This hostile environment has resulted in the removal of entertainment and music shows from television and radio broadcasts. Since August of 2021, UNAMA has documented about 80 cases of mistreatment, torture, disappearance, and murder of journalists and media workers. As a result, some of the journalists have fled the country and established their own media outlets in exile and working to help us to hear the first-hand information from the ground. This brings us, of course, to today's vital discussion on the role of journalism and exile, and the larger question on the type of role they can play, how they can influence the situation, and how we can support them. Today, we are very honored for having an excellent list of speakers and panelists that truly they don't really need an introduction, because I really think that their names speak for their work and for themselves. But still, I will do the formality, and I'm going to go ahead and try to introduce them when sharing their very brief bios with our audience and with all of you. We have Kari Kaeli. She is a veteran reporter and editor with multimedia portfolio and passion for transparency, free speech, and teaching. After a very long career covering politics in Washington, Kelly moved into the classroom full-time because she says universities are the laboratories that will discover the formula for making fact-based journalism viable again. In 2017 and 18, journalism lecturer at University of New Hampshire, Kelly has also taught at American University, George Washington University, and Princeton University. She holds a bachelor degree from Princeton University, a master's degree from American University, and was a Knight Fellow at Stanford University. Our second speaker is Zahra Joya. She is an award-winning Afghan journalist and founder of Rokhshana Media, an organization that tells us the stories of Afghan women to both a domestic and global audience. In 2021, after Kabul fell, Zahra was evacuated to the UK. She currently lives and works in London. Joya was one of the 12 women named Times Woman of the Year in 2022. She was recognized for her journalism and was interviewed by Angelina Jolie. And our third speaker is Mr. Samiullah Mehdi. Mr. Mehdi is the editor-in-chief of AMU TV, where he is leading Afghanistan's largest hybrid newsroom of more than 30 journalists in the US and over 24 other across the world. Mr. Mehdi is former director of Pike Investigative Journalism Center and fellow at Harvard University. He was recently the bureau chief of Radio Azadi and in Afghanistan and the strategic advisor to Tolo News. He worked as CEO of Khurshid TV and as a director of news and current affairs at TV1. In 2012, Mr. Mehdi was awarded the Knight International Journalism Award by the International Center for Journalists for his excellent and courageous reporting. And of course, our fourth speaker is Mr. Zaki Daryabi. Mr. Zaki Daryabi is an award winner, renowned journalist from Afghanistan, currently living in exile. He is the co-founder and editor-in-chief of the Itlaat Rose and Kabul Now newspaper. He has been known for his investigative journalism, exposing chronic nepotism and corruption within Afghanistan's previous republic. In 2020, he won Transparency International's Anti-Corruption Award. Currently, he operates the Itlaat Rose and Kabul Now from Silver Spring, Maryland, just my neighbor. I do want to dive into the conversation because I do know there are a lot of people who wants to hear your perspective and your inputs on not only the current situation of journalism in Afghanistan and the role that media in exile right now plays and their contribution, but I think also the challenges that they all face and the ways we can help them and how it could be further expanded. And also, I think a little bit of a look into the situation in the ground right now for media outlets in Afghanistan. And with that, I think I would wanted to start with Mr. Mehdi. I think, Mr. Mehdi, you have an excellent background that everyone knows. You have done worked with multiple and pretty renowned names of Afghan media outlets in Afghanistan. And you are right now here and outside of Afghanistan in the US, and you have started and co-founded the OMU TV. And I think it comes and to bring us to the larger question of how do you see the role of media in exile? How do you see the contribution they can play? How do you manage the authenticity of the coverage? Because I think that's a very, very critical part. And what do you advise and where do you see this new space for Afghan media outlets that just started for, I believe, all of you this recently and last 2 years? I know it's a lot of questions, but let's start with you first.
Thank you so much, Safi, Ambassador Ross, and everyone, the Afghanistan Policy Lab at Princeton University. I'm glad to be here. So yourself being a former journalist, you're asking very important and tricky questions at the same time. Well, the good news is that media journalism is still standing in Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think that's the only good news that we have nowadays about Afghanistan. While everything has collapsed,
mm-hmm.
the government collapsed, fortunately, national security forces collapsed, parliament collapsed, everything collapsed. But now we see that what it meant when we used to say that freedom of expression is the biggest achievement of this nation in the past 20 years. We see the results now. Mm-hmm. We see that everything collapsed, but journalism and the way, fighters for freedom of expression are standing, they are still standing and they are still fighting, still struggling to, bring news and information to the households of our people. That's mm-hmm. something, a sense of pride for us. And at the same time, it has come with a lot of cost, of course. Mm-hmm. As you mentioned in your introduction, there have been, dozens of arrests, mm-hmm. tortures, humiliations by the Taliban on journalists and media workers in the past 2 years. Let me give you and the audiences a little bit of background on what was happening before August 2021, because it didn't happen, all of a sudden, and it didn't happen in vacuum. In the sense of freedom of expression and journalism. As you know, we have lost over 100 journalists and media workers in the past 2 decades. Unfortunately, most of them were nationals of Afghanistan. And at the same time, a majority of them have been killed by the Taliban. Taliban have taken responsibility in a number of cases. Not all cases, but there are some, very famous cases that Taliban took responsibility for killing journalists. One of them was the January 2016 attack on Tolo TV vehicle, where, at that time I was working with Tolo TV, and we lost 7 people in one day, and over 15 people were badly, severely wounded, and Taliban took responsibility with pride because they had, announced Tolo TV, One TV, and some other media outlets as their military targets. So prior to 2021 August, era of terror started, especially the last 1 year before August 2021. A number of journalists, civil society activists, media personalities were targeted, and some of them were killed by the Taliban, including my former colleague Ilyas Dai, who was Radio Free Europe's Radio Azadi's reporter in Helmand province, in this province of Helmand, a very nice person, wonderful journalist who was killed by the Taliban. Yamas Yawash and a number of other people were also killed. Of course, we don't know really who were behind these killings, but about Ilyas Dai, I'm sure it was Taliban, because Dai told me personally several times that Taliban were threatening him. So when Taliban took over, it was obvious for everyone that freedom of expression, it's not going to remain the same.
True.
We had lost that level of leverage, and we had lost constitutional support, law support, legal support, and international support. Now Taliban have control over, newsrooms in Kabul, across the country. Freedom of expression doesn't exist in the way that we used to experience it in the past and exercise it in the past 2 decades. Now Taliban have a full control over, newsrooms. They control news subjects. They control the way political talk shows are, presented. They control guests. They control everything, even the appearance of guests and presenters, especially female guests and presenters. So with this long, lengthy introduction, what I'm trying to say is the need for continuing objective, balanced, and independent reporting from abroad was visible, vital, more than ever before. That need was, sensed by those journalists who are now in exile, unfortunately, including myself, Zaki Daryabi, Zahra Jan, and other colleagues. We had no other choice but to, either continue working on the platforms that we had established earlier, build new platforms for the new situation. This context, Amu TV was built. A number of colleagues, including Lutfullah Najafizadeh, who was the head of Tola News, myself, and some other colleagues. Now we are broadcasting into Afghanistan through satellite from Virginia, Sterling, Virginia. And we have a 24/7 news, current affairs, and entertainment channel. I believe that we are the only channel which is broadcasting from abroad, and established in the past 2 years, and owned and managed by journalists. I stop here.
I think the part that I wanted to really come back is really the authenticity. This was one of the questions I wanted to raise. It's a challenging one, but how it is done, because I know you're out of the country for most of the medias who are now operating outside of Afghanistan, and then I think the finding the right information is always a challenge. How that is managed so far?
It's very difficult to manage from a lot of aspects. First of all, sustainability of media in exile, or as I prefer to call it, hybrid media, because a majority of our colleagues are inside the country. Sustainability, financial sustainability is the biggest question, because we are not in our natural habitat anymore. We are not in our own market. So finding advertisement and commercials, almost impossible. So we have to rely on two things. We have to rely on international donors, NGOs, and also online advertisement or digital advertisement. The digital advertisement for us, for example, on YouTube, we have started, gaining some revenue on YouTube, but it's very small. It's impossible to rely on that as a single source for sustainability of your channel. So the only resource for us is international NGOs. And why it's needed? Because Taliban are now dominating the narrative coming out of Afghanistan. If these media outlets, which are established abroad, don't exist, it means Taliban will dominate everything about Afghanistan. While the main struggle is the struggle between narratives and the way Taliban are trying to portray new Afghanistan and introduce new Afghanistan. When you think that Taliban are about to create and build, a madrasa in every single district, or several madrasas in every single district, it means they are about to change the mindset of the new generation of Afghanistan. And it is a war of narratives. And the only way to challenge that is provide the population, especially the young generation of Afghanistan, with the credible and independent and balanced information and news. It's not easy. It's a very, very difficult task that we are undertaking every day, and we are thousands of miles away from home. But that's the only thing that we have to do. We have no other options.
Thank you. This is, I think, was great. Just really helping us to understand the really, as the title of this discussion says, the critical role that media in exile right now plays in the current situation in Afghanistan. And I think this brings me to you, Zahra John. I know you run Rokhshana Media, and a large part of the work is very much dedicated to coverage of stories of women's situation in the country. And Mehdi Zeb was talking about this, when it comes to the authenticity in the work with colleagues in the ground, how you manage that to get the true story. And I think he talked about the challenge on the sustainability, but I do believe, I think the type of challenge you're probably facing might be also security plus all others, is that just let us know, tell us how you do it, and how outlets like the one you run are managing the risks that are associated, and how critical you think it is to really get the true stories from the ground, especially with the situation of women in Afghanistan and what they're going through and facing.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Before I want to start my speech, I would like to inform you, because I am in Tajikistan right now, and the internet connection is so poor, and it's almost maybe it will be shut down soon, but hopefully I can finish my speech. So I think one thing is very clear here for us, at least as a female journalist, that the female journalist, and alongside of the male journalist, as Mehdi Saib mentioned, they are fighting for something very important and vital, which is the most important thing is freedom of speech. It's the very basic, but very fundamental rights, human rights. So that's, I think, it has a lot of value for us, that we are doing something very important. But unfortunately, Taliban inside of the country, they are using media and journalists, in some case YouTubers, as a tool, and to spread more propaganda and work for themselves. But for the independent media and journalists, especially female journalists, the situation is getting harder by day, which is a big concern for us. But we are witness that a number of brave female journalists are still working inside of Afghanistan, which is it's my pleasure and it's my honor that I'm working with the most majority female journalists in Afghanistan, which is great, because at the moment, women, because of their gender, and on top of that, journalists, they are working, both of them a serious crime regarding to the Taliban point of view. So yeah, I mean, and unfortunately, the number of the female journalists has a lot of increase, and some provinces of Afghanistan, especially in southern country, Afghanistan or south country, there is not any single space for female journalists to work there, which is really sad for us. We are losing a very important potential and for force work, which is really painful. And the other things that I really want to mention, I think Taliban, they have something very serious about women situation that the human rights activists, they call gender apartheid. So unfortunately, at the moment, women in the media and independent media are under attack. There is no space. There is no freedom of speech. And yeah, my colleagues and other fellow journalists, they are working in hiding. They are not allowed to do something in public. And this is the situation of our country, unfortunately. Yeah.
I think hands off to you and to your colleagues and to all who's doing this brave work, because truly it's beyond bravery to do what you're doing at the risk of, when you know your life is in risk and your reputation and your family, but you still continue to fight for something that you believe. And you did mention, I think, freedom of speech as part of that. That's impressive, and thank you for what you're doing. And I think I also wanted to come to you, Daryobise, because you are a name that's so well known to many of us, because you stand for the work you always had done was investigative journalism. You looked into the most complex corruption cases in Afghanistan, and even then it was not easy, it was risky, and you had a lot of challenges to do that. And I think now probably the larger question would be how you foresee doing that moving forward with the type of environment that you and your colleagues are facing, because you're out of Afghanistan and probably you do have colleagues on the ground still working. That's number one. And also, I think the critical role that this can potentially play in a space, we all talked about it. It's a regime that it's not a democratic country, and it's not a democratic government. It's an authoritarian regime. And and truly there is no check and balance, and then there is no accountability system, correct? So I always I'm a strong supporter of saying that's exactly the time we really need to support media and civil society and civil society activists, because and you're part of it, because you are the one that probably will create the accountability mechanism, but you're in the forefront of it. How do you do, and how you manage, and how you mitigate the risk, and what do you want to tell us?
Good afternoon, good evening. Thank you, Ambassador Ross, and thank you, Afghanistan Policy Lab colleagues. I'm very glad to see so many good friends here from media and also Afghan society. I think what Sami and Zahra mentioned is a part of the answer that we should have on this question. The main challenge that I think we face as a journalist in media organization is the Taliban. It's a dictator regime that their mind and their action is very clear. They want to stop us. They want to remove us as an independent journalism and media from Afghanistan. So now working with Etelatrus and many other media outlets who are reporting from Afghanistan independently on Afghanistan issues is a crime. They announced it, and they announced it publicly in many provinces. So it is the first challenge, that how actually, while you are trying to keep the flow of information alive from Afghanistan, entail what's happening inside the country, and what's important that people should know, the challenge is that how you can safely do it, and how you can think and make the safety of your colleagues who are inside Afghanistan is the first priority. It's really, really a big continuous challenge that we face every day and every hours. I think the main concern that every day we are waking up with is that if we hear of somebody have been detained or tortured, this is the main concern that I think all exiled media and Afghanistan journalists, and especially the editors and co-founders, face every day. This is a challenge, but I think the good thing is that still you see a lot of motivation coming from former journalists and also some new journalists who are becoming new in Afghanistan media landscape. And then you see the motivations that the citizens show to supporting free speech and free media in Afghanistan. I think we are both, in all of us are agree that every day we receive dozens of reports from citizens from different provinces to our WhatsApp channel, Facebook, Telegram, and a lot of things. So you see that a big support is coming through citizens from different part of the country to exiled media and independent media outside the country. This is what I think we can rely on, but I think it doesn't reach sometimes on the accurate information. Sometimes it's a challenge to like find the truth and to like do some fact checking on receiving some citizen reporting. This is a challenging issue that we face, but it's I think one of the biggest hope that exile media and we all looking to that. How I think we many times we discuss with each other among us with Mahdi Said, Zahra John, that how we can provide platforms and how can we provide like safe mechanism for citizens to report with us, share the, what they see in their neighborhood in their cities. For the Tlatrus, unfortunately, after the fall of Kabul, we just missed, and I mean, we missed a lot of very, very experienced journalists. Many of them are now doing Uber, doing some work in the shops, markets, and we are not able to bring them as a journalist into work to continue as journalists with Etelatrus. It's a financial issue, it's a timing issue, it's a lot of elements is coming that we lose them. So I think as a manager of an organization, that the experience, the professionalism, the capacity that we have been built in past 2 decades is like we need to rebuild them, and we have because we lose a lot of good journalists. So We stopped like investigative journalism for more than 1 year because we doesn't have the capacity. We doesn't have the journalists. Now I think slowly the media is building again their capacity. And one of the good things that we did in Italy was at least we trained like about 47 journalists in past 6 months in different provinces of Afghanistan, include women and also men from different geography of Afghanistan. I think the investigative journalism is very, very hard because you know the role, you know the territorial government and the restrictions they bring. And then you don't have any legal framework that can be support for access to information or right to the information. And then you don't have the structure that can be support that we had before in the previous government. So it's hard, but I think it's still possible. We at least published, we're still publishing at least 2 investigative reports every month. And I think one is coming out tomorrow. So this is the hope, but still I think when it's coming to investigative journalism, it's very, very expensive to produce a piece of investigative journalism right now because of the different time zone, the cost of the work, and also cost of access to the information, safety, fact checking, and a lot of things in access to the documents to verify something. It's, I think, what I can talk now, but maybe little we can write some more points after other colleagues.
Sure. Thank you, Daria. I mean, it was sad to hear that this has been a very hard, bumpy road for you. But I'm kind of a little bit pleased that you kind of hinted out that things are just starting to smooth out a little bit, but not too much. So hopefully we go in that direction, and which I think is the right segment, Caddy, to come to you, because you just heard probably the 3 prominent Afghan journalists that now they're doing wonderful and great work here outside of the country, but with challenges, with so many challenges. And I think at the core of it really comes the sustainability and financial, which is true. But beyond that, I think the institutional support that does not exist anymore in the country, correct fact checking and loss of staff and all that comes and I think the risk and the security. But I wanted to hear from you, because you really bring this outside, this international lens, the experiences of other countries where you have seen successful model have worked or not worked. And how do you see the Afghan media in exile? How do they manage the challenge? What do you want to tell them, or how do you think is the best way to move forward and the space to strengthen their work, what they're doing right now, which I think criticality, and it's pretty important and vital.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for hosting this event, and I am honored to be in the company of such distinguished and really brave journalists. I am, as you mentioned, I've spent my entire career in journalism, and I am absolutely committed to it. I think, and now I teach journalism because I agree. I think it is it is the pillar for human rights and democracy. And I guess my message to you is, and it's both good news and bad news, is that you are not alone. Afghan journalists are not alone. That what your struggle is part of a global struggle for free speech, and it's part of a larger war on democracy that we are really all fighting here. And I wish I could say I have the answers, but I think instead of bringing answers, I think what we Americans can do in all humility is to say we're looking for allies. We need allies in this global fight. And, I watched a movie the other night about Charles de Gaulle, the famous, he was a general who was exiled from his country after it fell to Nazi Germany. And he gave a very famous speech from London where he said, this is not a war in France. It's a global war. And this war will not be determined by the Battle of France. It will be a global war. And I feel like for all of us as journalists, we're really in a similar position, and we should take some inspiration from that example, somebody who had to leave his country in order to win it back again. And I think, and so we're seeing this all over the world. I just left a journalist from Mexico and a journalist from Nicaragua, both of whom are living here in exile and trying to pursue their work here. And I think what you're doing is, it really is, the good news is that we have the technology now to continue to do journalism, even if we are forced out of our spaces. And, you know, one of the things we've been talking, a lot of journalists right now, I work at the University of Missouri. We're right in the middle of the country. We like to call it the middle of America. And there is an Afghan journalist at the University of Missouri and who we are working with. There's also a Kashmiri journalist who is living at the University of Missouri and trying to pursue her career. And I think what we are finding is that we need to find ways, as some of your colleagues have noted here, raise money to continue this sort of work, and ways to support journalists, not just financially, but psychologically. It is, I think everybody here can attest that, and the reason I'm so committed to working to support people who are doing your work is that I feel like it is the ultimate answer to the bad guys. You know, you can kick us out, and all of you have lost your country, you have lost family ties, you have lost your culture, your language, your food. The least we can do is let you have your job. And so there are people here who are working. We are working really hard to try to build support and build an infrastructure that will help journalists continue to do their work wherever that may happen to be. Some people are working from the United States, some people are working from Europe, some people are working from, you know, countries neighboring the countries they had to leave. But among the things that we're working for, first of all, I think politicians need, and policy leaders, which is why I'm glad the Afghanistan Policy Lab and Princeton University's School of Public Affairs is involved in this, that policymakers need to understand that journalists need support. You need visas. You need legal support so that you can continue to do your work from wherever you are. You need financial support, as has been mentioned here, and you need psychological support because being ripped away from the country, nobody knows a country better than a journalist, right? You are so involved in covering that culture, and to suddenly be separated from it, I think is very difficult. And the Kashmiri journalist who is at the University of Missouri hates the word exile. She said, you know, she doesn't like to be called a journalist in exile because she said, I didn't choose this. And so sometimes I'm thinking now we might call you displaced journalists. You've been removed from the place where you belong. But I think what we want to do is try to support each other, journalists, as we face these struggles. And I will say that a couple of things, and I'll put links in the chat, two pieces of information that will be helpful to people on this call. Number one, journalists from the New York Times have created a scholarship fund. So this is going to be available to journalists who have been displaced and their families. Help pay to continue your education. And so I will place a link to that there. The second is that a colleague of mine at the Missouri School of Journalism runs a foundation called the Friendly Fellows. And this Alfred Friendly Fellowship Program traditionally has supported journalists from emerging democracies to come here to the United States for a year to work and to be trained. But because we are seeing so many journalists come here and not be able to go home, we are changing that program. And the Friendly Fellowship is now going to create a training program just for journalists in exile. And that program will run the month of June. And it will bring people to Columbia, Missouri, where the Missouri School of Journalism is, for several weeks of training and psychological support. And then we will take you to California for training in investigative reporting techniques. And the costs will be covered by this program. So I'm going to place a link to the application. And there are just a minimal number of spaces now. We can only take about 10 or 12, but we're hoping to raise money and we're hoping to expand that. So I will put the link in there. And I will say one last thing. We were talking about investigative journalism and how difficult it is, of course, when you're cut off from your sources. One thing I will recommend to the investigative journalists on this call, use the records that are available to you in the United States and in Europe, because every country, everybody who is trying to exercise influence tries to exercise influence in the EU and the United States. And luckily, the EU and the United States have a lot of public records available to journalists. And you can find out a lot about what's going on in other countries by using public records here. And that is one of the things that the investigative reporters and editors, which will run the training that I mentioned, will help you do. We have, and if anyone wants that information, I'll also put my email in the chat, and people can reach out to me, and I'll be glad to put you in touch with people from the investigative reporters and editors, which is a great professional organization here. I also have a colleague who was a founder of the Global Investigative Journalism Network, and all of us really want to help, because information is power, and we want to get that information to you so that you can empower your audiences.
Excellent. Thank you, Kari. I think this was great, and especially in reference to the linkages that you will provide, and we hope to share with our speakers and, of course, other broader audience too. I think most importantly, something you mentioned, which is the role of public policy or public diplomacy spaces to really elevate the voices of the critical need for outlets like media outlets, in the stage of where we have a complete rollback, I think, on democracy and rights of women. That's what we say, and we have seen that that's unfortunately happening. And you mentioned Princeton University, so I'm very glad, and thank you for mentioning it. And I have to also mention that this is our second conversation on this topic, and it really comes with any Afghan you speak. And Mehdi have started with that. It really is the last 20 years, one of the areas that we truly made a progress and we made the greatest achievement. It was really with the freedom of speech, and then the rise of critical media outlets in Afghanistan, and now we see the impact of it, and we really don't want to lose that. So our hope is also that we bring greater attention to this subject, and we hope that it's picked up and continuously supported. So I come back to you, Mehdi. I know you talked about the importance of a media in exile, but there is one thing that is pretty sensitive and critical element to media outlets outside of Afghanistan right now, and also inside. And I think it's the new change that happened after the August 2021. And when I mentioned the authenticity, I think there is an element of balance. We have been a very fragile state, and it is a fragile country. And how do you see the role of media, especially those who are outside, because inside you also mentioned they're under extreme constraints, to really bring the right balance, if it is with the element of gender, if it is to the element of ethnicity, and if it really is to the element of authentic news and truth seeking, because this now truly this is the source of information we have, and it's a tough job. So what is your advice? How you want to tell people what needs to be done to really make sure we get the right information and we manage to create the right balance with this very sensitive and challenging and fragile situation that we all are, broken in every sense?
I think that's a very difficult question for a number of reasons. First of all, the role of social media and the way everybody is trying to use it or maybe abuse it has created an enormous challenge for professional reporters and journalists to tackle misinformation and or distorted information. In the past 2 years, we can divide, categorize media in several, classes. First, those media outlets who remained in Afghanistan, and unfortunately, despite all the struggle that they had no other option but to succumb to the will of the Taliban regime and their policies, because they were at the gunpoints, and many of their reporters, presenters, editors were detained by the Taliban, tortured by the Taliban, humiliated by the Taliban. So they had to, and the result is that we don't have a free media outlet inside the country anymore. Although I respect the work that they are doing, especially when it comes to social issues coverage. It's very, very vital and important to have these outlets continue working from inside the country. So that's one category of media. The second category is those media outlets which are completely under control of the Taliban, like RTA. There is no music, there is no woman face, there is no woman voice in it, radio and TV. Mm-hmm. And the entire network of RTA, which they have like 34 channels in 34 provinces, right? TV and radio. Mm-hmm. So and a number of state-owned and state-controlled newspapers, mm-hmm. which are only publicizing the Taliban narrative and Taliban agenda and their views. The third medium or source of information for the public is international media. Like, people still listen to BBC, Radio Azadi, and Deutsche Welle, and others similar platforms international. Mm-hmm. They have played, a very important role during the 80s, 90s. In the past 20 years, their role were kind of decreased by, overwhelming domestic media. But now you see that they are back again. Although Taliban have banned them inside the country, they are not on FM antennas anymore. So there are now two other categories. One is the new established media, or those who had to, be displaced, as Kathy very nicely put it, displaced media. Like Hashd Soap or Itlaat Rose or Zan Media and others, and those who are new established, like Amu TV. So in the midst of all these, it's very, very hard to find that fine line of objectivity and independence. Taliban have been using social media, especially YouTube nowadays, very, very strategically. YouTube plays no restrictions on Taliban, unlike Facebook, which has put a very, serious restriction on Taliban propaganda. YouTube, no restrictions on them. So you see YouTubers who are, promoting Taliban agenda, publishing or promoting distorted facts about almost everything. Afghanistan. The other day I was watching this show by a very well-known YouTuber on the Ministry of Vice and Virtue, and the way this guy was promoting Ministry of Taliban Ministry of Vice and Virtue is like you're promoting a pop star, or an actor or an artist, someone like that, or activist, while they are just responsible to restrict the lives of people, especially the lives of women in this. So that's happening. The situation for professional journalists is very tough. We are facing, shortage of resources. We're facing all the challenges mentioned by Daryabi earlier. Fact checking is very from thousands of miles away from home. Yeah, access to information, access to ordinary people, normal people day to day, is very, very hard. People refuse to talk on camera because they know if they tell the truth, what will happen to them. In the past 1 year, 14 people affiliated to AMU TV were detained, tortured, kept in detention for over 6 months. Just because Taliban have criminalized journalism and independent journalism. We saw, and I think everybody got the news, that some commentators on TV who dare to come and talk their minds, speak their minds on TV and radio or social media, were arrested by the Taliban. So now we see a wave of self-censorship among people. When people see that you're asking, a challenging, critical question of the Taliban, they refuse to talk to you sometimes because they don't want to face the consequences. Taliban have started arresting those journalists who work for displaced media. Taliban have started, suggesting bribes for journalists who work for displaced media. After detention, they are saying, so how much you're paid by this foreign media? We're not coming and working for your country. We will pay you higher money. Why you not come and give us some more information and leak their information? Who else is working with him? This kind of very vicious tactics are used by the Taliban, and it just overcomplicates the situation for independent and professional reporting of the country. But the good news is that there is a very good bond. Exiled journalists and those who are still inside the country. See, when we announced, a job opportunity at AMU TV, more than 300 applications were sent. I think it shows two things at the same time. First of all, it shows that job opportunities are very, very limited now in the country. And second, it shows that journalists are seeking, professional platforms to work with. And that's the situation, but Taliban are not taking it lightly, and they are about to, they have already started, punishing those who want to say the truth.
Sure, thank you. I think Mr. Deryabi has to leave, so I'm probably going to quickly come to him. Just really sharing one of the questions that our audience have asked, and I think it's very related to what Mehdi Saib said. It's really the question of misinformation about the news coming from Afghanistan, and somebody has asked what tools and mechanism the journalists and exile adopt to that. So it's related to kind of the same thing, and just wanted to hear your perspective, Deryabi Saib. How do you manage that challenge?
Thank you. I think we doesn't have any very specific mechanism. I think what the very, very famous media that is working from outside Afghanistan is bringing from Afghanistan. I think this is one of the main sources that we can rely on accurate information and see that what we are reading and watching from Afghanistan is accurate. Because if you are going for the other athletes who are working from inside, you see the influence of the Taliban on every single information that they publish every day. Include the category that Mehdi mentioned that are private sector of media, but they are working on the role of the Taliban. And then I think there are some partnership between local journalists, freelance journalists inside the country, with international media like New York Times, The Guardian, and many other outlets that we can rely on this information as well. But I think this is really a good question that we have to think about, like how we can come together to answer this question, to build a mechanism that when somebody is looking for Afghanistan for some accurate information, that we have to build this mechanism. I think there's no specific mechanism or solution for this, but what we can rely is like the media outlets that we are here, and also a lot of other media outlets that are famous in working from outside of Afghanistan, but they still have a lot of journalists inside the country. They do their job as a professional journalism, and they are not publishing some information that they have been not fact checking by themselves. So I think this is the answer to this question from my side.
Thank you. Thank you. I know you're supposed to leave, but just before you leave, any final words? I know you emphasized a lot on the support for media, and I think there is a very specific question to all of you is, how do you feel? How do you sense the support is in the host country that you are right now? And I leave it to you if you wish to answer or not, but there is that question, and what is your message to all those who want to help or contemplating the ideas on how to help? I
think we discussed that we all Afghanistan media and independent media need a political support. Free speech should be one of the main talking points between the governments in the Taliban. The emphasizing on only women right is a big mistake, because we lose a lot of basic rights. The human rights, the right to live is actually under question in the Taliban rule. While really emphasizing that the only wish that the international community should have from the Taliban is to let the girls go to school, it's really a very simple ask that we have. The demand should be much more bigger, and I think it was a mistake that we didn't see it in past 2 years. Freedom of speech and independent media should be part of that. Journalists who are working from the ground should be part of that. This is that we need from political point of view. I think this is a very, very good point for us. And then the second is like Mehdi Said mentioned, the sustainability is the biggest question for us. We don't see like how many years that we will exist if there is no support, financial support for the media. This is the third wish that we have. And then I think we are wishing that Taliban don't detain our journalists, but it's happening, and this is something that we don't have answer for that. Yeah.
Thank you. I will let you go, and then I'm going to come to.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time. I'm going to come to you, Zarajan. I think there was a couple of times reference to the YouTubers. I think the information that's now provided through the new technology available, and of course, one is the social media and YouTube. And I think it's just a critical point that was mentioned, that there is that free information provided, and it's the type of narrative that Taliban wants to build. And I heard, and I think to me it was very, it was nuances in a sense that how in certain platforms it's managed and maintained in a certain way that those information is filtered, but in YouTube channel it's not yet. So what do you say? I think, what is your call, or what is your recommendation in a sense how to manage that? Because I feel there is this platform out there, easy, accessible, free, and complete misinformation or disinformation.
Thank you for this important question. I think no one wants to put some sanction on their country. Not any Afghans and not myself and yours. We want to have a free Afghanistan, right? But the problem is we need some accountability. When we are asking for accountability, it's very important to addressing to the social media, including the YouTube. And let's remember that social media can be used for bad things and good things.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, you know about the Daesh, how they expand their networks from Iraq to Yemen to all Middle East countries, which is a big risk for all of the rest of the world. That the terrorist groups, they will use the social media for their aims, not to do something for our society. So I think this should be a big, I mean, still, I'm sure it's a big concern, but I don't know how we can ask from the social medias and the, for example, Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, to do something to save the future of the next generation, you know, and how we can. That's okay. Thank you so much. You provided a lot of good things for us, but how we can, as a human being, how we can avoid and how we can ban these bad things that is very dangerous for the next generation, for our own future, and never for now, for our life now at that time. I think it needs global talk and a global addressing from all people across the world, and we have to ask them for accountability if they are, I mean, of course they are part of this world, and they should be careful. So regarding to the Taliban, unfortunately, it's really true that they are using social media for their own aims, for their own propaganda, and this is a problem, you know. Of Afghan people, they want to be free, but unfortunately, no one inside of the country can do a post against the Taliban and social media. So many people have been arrested by the Taliban soldiers and by the Taliban intelligence, and we should not forget that the Taliban have a very specific team that I personally received a lot of information about them, that they are looking for people for their activities in social media. You know, like they are very careful about.
Absolutely.
They have full control in the country. They are controlling people, but on the other hand, they are doing propaganda for themselves. So it's dangerous, you know, for us as a human being, a social well, how I can, as a social worker, as a journalist, this is my right to ask the Zuckerberg and Elon Musk on behalf of my people, that on behalf of my fellow women, that please stop it, right? If the Taliban don't allow people to put their opinion on or share their opinion on social media, don't allow the Taliban to spread their propaganda on the social media.
Sure.
So yeah.
Thank you. I think this is critical, and I'm going to come to you, Carrie. I think Zahra really raised important questions, probably to the international community and responsible use and maintaining and containing the type of information that's shared, especially in case of Afghanistan. So how do you answer that? And also, I think the question of the host country, which is very relevant. We wanted to hear your perspective, the type of support that could be provided or is provided to Afghan media in exile or displaced.
Yeah, well, I think, again, as I said, this is a global problem. And I think Zahara really put the nail on it. Social media is like any new technology. It can be used for the good or it can be used for the very bad. And I think one of the big public policy questions that we have to confront globally is how do we deal with this, the way that this technology has been perverted to really use what should be a tool for greater democracy to actually undermine democracy. And so I think there has to be a lot more pressure put on the social media platforms, on the Elon Musks, on the Mark Zuckerbergs, and on the Google, which runs YouTube. And so I think it's really, really important that we keep the pressure on in that area, and it is a global problem. I think in terms of the host countries, we are seeing a global problem for journalists. So one of the problems that I see, I have a chair called the Lee Hill Chair in Free Press Studies. And, every week there's Afghanistan, there's Kashmir, there's Ukraine, there's Russia, journalists are being pushed out. And I think the message we have to give policymakers and citizens of host countries is if you want freedom, if you want secure borders, you must view this as your problem, as well as it's not just Afghanistan's problem. It's not just Nicaragua's problem. Here in the United States, you hear a lot of complaints about illegal immigration from the South. And, my view is, why are people fleeing their countries? It's not because they want to leave their countries. It's because there are problems there. There's corruption, there's war. What is the best weapon against that? Journalism. So if you want to solve, and I think this is a message we have to deliver over and over again, that journalism is the antidote to corruption, and transparency is the antidote to corruption. And what is the vector for transparency? It's journalism. So I think it's really important to address policymakers to not let them have the excuse that, oh, it's costing too much money, we can't possibly afford it. We can't, yes, we can. We have to afford this because it is a problem that affects every country and every citizen in every country. And I think that's a message we have to give over and over again. But I think this question of social media and propagandizing is challenging all of us in every country. And one of the things I would say that we need to think about is calibrating our tactics. So, for example, if as one of the panelists was saying, if the Taliban is using YouTube to talk about how great its ministry of virtue is, then maybe we need to use YouTube to sort of cut that video and create a fact check, or maybe, do something funny, like satirize it, do thought bubbles over the, just rip the video and start to remix it in a way that gives a response. And so I think we need to start to think outside the box about how to handle this in the short term. In the long term, I think we have to put a lot more pressure on the social media platforms to be responsible citizens of the world.
Thank you, Katie. I think you summarized the conversation in the best way possible in terms of how media and journalism itself is the antidote to transparency and fighting corruption, which is the true pillars of democracy. And then how do we need to think out of the box? And this note, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Mr. Gran Hewat, who is one of our fellows at Afghanistan Policy Lab, and he will summarize the conversation today. He was former spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and also researcher of the Afghanistan Analyst Network, a well-known name among many colleagues and friends. And it was very sad that we missed Deborah today because she was supposed to moderate the panel and she got some health emergency, and I hope she's feeling fine. But with that note, I'm going to hand it over to Gransep and Mr. Hewat. You have a tough job to do it in 3 minutes. Thank you. And my gratitude to you all.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Roz and colleagues. It's so great to see you all here on the face of the screen. And I'm glad that Zahra Jan could stay with us, and your internet did not disconnect. And I take this as a sign of hope that this thing sustain and the efforts that you are all putting into this very.
What's it? It's a really kind of commitment, because it's almost 3 a.m. I am woke up for you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. And that word a lot to us. That means a lot to us and to the media community of the people of Afghanistan. Yeah. Your encouraging speeches and the rich discussion that you all put in today's panel is worth a lot to the audience and to those who are thinking about freedom of speech in Afghanistan, the war of narrative that Mr. Mahdi said, and the challenges and the importance of the freedom of speech for the work that the people of Afghanistan deserve to receive, and the rights that Cathy discussed are incredibly critical, and we need to keep them in mind and consideration for our thoughts and decisions for the policymakers and those who are making key decisions on approaches towards Afghanistan. I am going to stop here and wish you all very best and all the best of luck, and have a good afternoon and morning, Zahra Jan, and yeah.
Thank you. My sincere gratitude to you all on behalf of the Afghanistan Policy Lab for the great work you're doing and your contribution today to the discussion. This will be recorded and available online. And of course, we're going to use it for our materials being published from the Afghanistan Policy Lab. It was an interesting conversation and we're very grateful. And of course, we went beyond our time by 15 minutes. So thank you. Have a wonderful time. And I hope to be in touch with you all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.